Welcome back to Nearbound Marketing. I'm Logan Lyles. I'm your host, and our guest today is Justin Rowe. He is the CEO of Impactable. He and I have been LinkedIn profile friends for a long time, but first time hopping on. Justin, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Happy to be here.
Awesome. We are going to be doing a deeper dive into LinkedIn thought leader ads today. It was several months back in 2023, where we did our first episode on this. Some interesting stats that came out from Brittany Blanken, then at Metadata, talking about some of the early tests and results that they saw with this new platform. Justin, for folks, before we get into kind of what you guys have done with LinkedIn thought leader ads, some learnings you've had along the way, as you mentioned to me, some things that you wish you knew when you started. Give us a little bit of context into yourself, your company, and what you guys are doing with LinkedIn thought leader ads at a high level to set the context, man.
Yeah, just for a little context, so I actually started a LinkedIn lead generation agency 5 or so years ago, and we had about 200 clients with that. It was acquired about 2 years ago by a data-heavy investor, so a majority buyout. I stayed on, minority managing partner now, and we pivoted the company 2 years ago from a outreach agency into what you know today as the LinkedIn ads agency. We also got a cease and desist letter from LinkedIn around the same time. Our ad account seized and rebranded, made the best of it. So that's probably a whole story there. Suffice it to say, from that point to now, we now have about a little over 200 clients. We are almost all of our revenue is LinkedIn ads related. And we have about 30 clients that are using thought leader ads in different parts of their funnel. I use thought leader ads in my funnel. And I'm also very active organically on LinkedIn. So yes, we've been profile buddies for a while now. I have a little over 70,000 followers. And I've been active on the platform on and off for about 5 years. And so I would say just a little more info about the thought leader ads is, I forget how many years ago, it's been a few years. It was probably almost a year or two before thought leader ads came out. I was doing something similar because I had the idea that if I could marry my organic profile, which was growing, and amplify it with paid ads, that I could be onto something. So what I did was I took screenshots of my top performing posts, and I made sure the screenshots included all the likes and comments, the 89 likes and 57 comments, so I could bake in some of that social proof. And I used those images as single image ads on the LinkedIn paid side to amplify my message to the target demographic. That worked really well. In fact, your friends at Metadata, actually, they gave me credit for that. I was going to say they stole my idea, but we borrow ideas from each other all the time as marketers. They borrowed my idea. They started doing that. And then, when thought leader ads came out, they were also one of the first ones jumping on it. They stay on the trends, the cutting edge. I like their marketing department's pretty savvy. And so, now we're actually have thought leader ads, which you can post something from your personal LinkedIn organic profile, and then you can go over to the paid ad side and you can actually sponsor that specific post with paid ads to your laser target LinkedIn targeting criteria, which is a really powerful combination, which is what everyone's excited about.
Yeah, a powerful combination. So many of us that got active right around that time. It was interesting. I was waiting to hear you say, what was that year you got started? And I was just doing some thinking on this. It was like 2017 for me. And so it's been 6 years. I was just kind of belaboring the point with my friend Dan Sanchez, who's been on the show before. Yeah. I think you know as well. And we're like, man, we've had some good wins. We've been on here a long time, but not as consistent as some of those folks that, have really taken off, like a Justin Welsh or someone like that. But all that being said, you've had a ton of consistency, a ton of success. And I love what you bring to the table and what thought leader ads pose as an opportunity. A lot of us who are kind of in the same boat, like myself, yourself, Dan, Justin Simon, who was at Metadata, has now gone out on his own, have been talking about the power of personal brands as the distribution mechanism that really works the best on LinkedIn, but we don't have that same targeting that we could leverage on the other side. Now they're coming together. Now, some people have been really excited about this. It's why we did a previous episode here. Others have said, oh, this is the death of organic reach from personal internal profiles, which I actually know someone who posted for the first time ever to their LinkedIn profile, and their first 3 posts, they did better than mine with 19,000 followers or so just last week. So it's an interesting time. What do you think about the overall opportunity and why this is something that brands should be paying attention to, Justin?
I think the overall opportunity on LinkedIn, both the organic and the paid side, is still there no matter what. And it has up and downs, and it can be frustrating when newer people, take off, or people that have been around the same time seem to take off. I will say this, the people who are in light stratosphere or whatever, usually they're selling some kind of LinkedIn organic solution. Like it's usually like Justin Welsh or the Matt Barker or the ones that dominate my feed. They're all selling like LinkedIn content. It's a little harder for people running, other companies, SaaS companies, service companies, to stay in the spotlight and for their topics to resonate as much with users. So maybe
it's
don't
a really good
too
call out, and I'll just reiterate that, man. Yeah, it can be a little frustrating. I saw maybe Jay Klaus talk about this, or maybe it was Dan talking about the meta creators, the creators who create about the platform they create on, right? So like the Think Medias of the world in the YouTube space, the Justin Welsh's on LinkedIn. The thing you got to remember is that they have a great thread to pull on. Right? If you're talking about that platform on the platform, it's always going to be there. And don't get too discouraged by comparing yourself there, because they have that advantage. And 2, they're going for a broader audience than you likely are. So don't just judge success there. So I just want to reiterate that point, and I'll let you keep making the point you were going to make from there, my friend.
It's also another, like, kind of drilling into that. I've always had this theory starting out with LinkedIn. I named it the ponds theory. And the idea is that when you come to LinkedIn, almost everyone views it as this ocean, and it's intimidating. Even, however many followers you have, whether it's 5, 10, 20,000, your feed is messy. It has these big mega influencers, and then new people pop up and are rising, and you are constantly comparing yourself to them. But I had this thought, I think years ago, that really stuck with me. And I instead of thinking about LinkedIn as this big ocean that some tiny minnow like us can't possibly like make a noise in, instead think of LinkedIn as tiny ponds, and your pond is your connections. So if you have 15,000 connections, your connections, people that are connected to you, their average amount of followers are usually less than 1,000. And to them, you might be, if you're posting, 1, 2, 3, 5 times a week, you might be the loudest voice on their feed. So yes, it might be discouraging to you to look at your feed and see other people, but having the thought that it's actually, if you curate your own network, and the one big thing I advise is take control of your own network. So don't just post and then accept connection requests, because in that instance, you're letting other people bake you into their network. What you should be doing is building and stacking your network in a targeted way so that your message can dominate. And then you just have to worry about dominating your little pond and growing and expanding it. And if you do it in that way, it's way more palatable. It's less depressing. And you can get a lot more traction. So I would say that's probably another good thing just to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely worth noting. And I think that's some encouragement, especially as we release this episode, not far off from New Year's. A lot of people's New Year's resolution was finally get active on LinkedIn this year and start posting and stop lurking. There can be some things like that can stop people. And I think you're giving some encouragement there. Speaking of encouragement, when it comes to LinkedIn Thought Leader ads specifically, Justin, you did a good job of explaining kind of your experience, both personally and with clients, with LinkedIn ads in general, and then Thought Leader ads. Before we get into the do's and don'ts and how to get started and how to take advantage of this opportunity, what have just been some of the results that have stood out to you for either yourself or your clients in leveraging LinkedIn Thought Leader ads in their own marketing mix?
So I would have 2 different tracks for this. There's those people that already have organic presence on LinkedIn. So at the company, there's individuals with organic presence, and you have data to work with. And so from there, you can more amplify things that are working. And then there's another track where the company doesn't have anyone personally that's been active. They like the idea, and Thought Leader ads are a way to leverage that without maybe having that same foundation. So in the first one, which is probably the preferred one, and that's kind of like what I've done. So I spent years posting on LinkedIn, and I've gone through the phases. I was actually more popular a couple of years ago than I am now, because I was posting about more broader subjects, more fluffy subjects. And then I got burned out and took a break. Now I came back in the last year and a half, and I've just been drilling 80% of my content in one specific thing, which is LinkedIn ads. Less popular, but more profitable. So I would say if you have the data or if you have the will to test organically and see what works, and what I define as works isn't what's popular, but the true test is if you make a post and people actually reach out with a general interest in what you are, what you're representing. That to me is success. So it might look like a heck of a lot more or less impressions or likes than your most popular posts, but those ones that generate actual like movement across the fence into interest or inbound requests, hang on to those. And when you find those, then yes, you can actually go over to the paid ads, sponsor that specific post, choose your target demographic, and make sure that your ICP sees these posts that hopefully move the needle on trust. And I would say that's the big factor. Like the whole reason when you're talking about these personal brands are doing well in B2B, in my mind, people want to know who to trust. They want to know who to listen to. And LinkedIn, again, this is another thing that I've kind of discovered that's really clicked with me. LinkedIn is probably the only platform that I know of where B2B founders, marketers, executives log in actually wanting to be influenced on buying decisions, because I log in and I want to know what new tech are people using, what new marketing strategies are there, what new service partners are there that are actually, if and when we're ready, who would I want to use? I'm using LinkedIn. So people are willing to be influenced on buying decisions, but they need to know who to trust. And the way you do that is by showing up, not just giving value, but actually, positioning yourself as an expert in that field. And the go-to person for trustworthy information. And then those are the kind of posts that usually work really well with thought leader ads. And you kind of have to figure that as you go. If you don't have the organic data to see what's working and amplify it, you kind of have to start, test, and amplify what's working on the paid side if you don't have that already.
Yeah. So the two kind of situations you're talking about is if you're looking to get started with LinkedIn thought leader ads, you look internally and you have people with organic presence. They've already been kind of working that LinkedIn muscle organically themselves, or you don't, but you're really looking at kind of the same road in front of you. If you're in the former camp, then you're already a few steps down the road. But essentially, you want to either start identifying what have been those posts that are generating engagement and even the follow-ups, the DMs, the visits to the website, the booking of the calls and those sorts of things. If you're in the second camp, just means you have to maybe spend a little bit more time organically over a few weeks or a few months kind of testing to figure out what those are before you jump right into thought leader ads. Is that really the main difference between those two camps as you were describing it?
Yeah, just having the historical data of knowing what to amplify. Like if I have someone with a strong, if I had Justin Simmons or some of these people that they probably already know exactly which posts. Like if I ask them what their top 15, 20, they probably even have it in a spreadsheet somewhere, and they're probably recycling those posts to some degree on a monthly basis. Those super easy because I could make those, you could make those 20 posts evergreen now. You could make it on two things. You could either take your top 1, 2, or 3 posts and make sure it's the first touch of like a new prospect, and then that could kickstart a journey. Or you could take the second approach where you could say, anyone who leaves my website and visits LinkedIn, I want to make sure they see these 15 pieces of content that will help move the needle on trust and credibility in the shortest amount of time. And to me, that's probably the more powerful approach, to use this as a retargeting, higher saturation. And it's kind of that Pond's theory as well. Like if you can move it into a smaller segment, you can dominate that group. They start seeing you everywhere on LinkedIn. And the crazy thing is it's not overly obvious that these are ads. Like you really have to look, and it looks exactly like a post until it says like promoted by, and it's really subtle. But now they have the custom links, and then it says promoted by. So it's really not very detectable to most people, which is really clever.
Yeah, it looks very similar to an organic post. It just has that little, I think, gray, promoted line that it says there. I want to double down on this because I'm sure people listening to this that, have been listening to the show for a while. They see the opportunity. Okay, they're kind of determining what camp they're in. And their next question is, okay, what sort of content? And before we get into video, vertical, square, images. They've even changed the types of content that you can promote, and that's a little bit limited. I do want to ask you those sorts of questions, but I want to drill into what you were just talking about there. with LinkedIn thought leader ads, where do you see them fitting, or what are the kind of different plays as you were just mentioning there? Is it more awareness that you see working really well? Is it more the retargeting the folks that are already in consideration? Let's talk about the types of posts when it comes to matching the type of post with the stage of the buyer journey and the type of content you're putting in front of people. Give us a little bit into how you think about that and how you've seen it work well, Justin.
Yeah, and I can tie it into the results too. So I would say, yeah, there's clear buckets that I see that make the most sense for creating these kind of posts, and where they would fit in the funnel. So one of the things that I've seen really well is if you're a SaaS company or if you're a service company, if you share kind of a post, almost like it would be like a case study, but when you do it from like your personal profile, you're like, hey, had a client that was spending this and was getting this result, and we turned it into this in 30 days, here's how, or, in 90 days or whatever, here's how. Like walking through an actual client example, or we got to these results from here. That works really well as a personal post. It also works really well to move the needle on trust and credibility. The reason I also like those posts, because those actually do really well either on the initial cold or as part of the retargeting matrix. For most clients, I would say there's a big consideration between, okay, do I put this in cold or do I put this in retargeting? Typically, if you have a medium or larger total addressable market, if you're a software company and you have a decent chunk of people you can serve to, and you don't have the biggest budget on LinkedIn, the frequency of your cold campaigns will be pretty small. Usually, the frequency of your cold campaigns might be 5 or less in a 30 or 90 day window, which means in that scenario, you kind of want to curate your top 2, 3, 4 assets and make sure that you have the strongest first touch possible, unless you're taking an ABM approach. But then in retargeting, you could have 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people. And even with a small budget, you could relatively dominate or saturate that group to the point where they could see 15 or 20 pieces of content over 90 days. So you need to be a little pickier on the cold layer of what you put up front. Case studies, client results, or this is exactly how I did this, this, and this. That works really well with cold. And it also kind of self-qualifies because if someone's reading, I think one of my biggest or the two best cold influencer ads that we're running right now, one is from me, and it starts out saying, I had a client spending $30,000 a month on LinkedIn, and here's how we took them from this to this. So it just starts at that, and then it breaks down exactly what we did. I basically walk through like how I would approach an audit. And so that's really appealing to people either currently running LinkedIn ads, which that's a really good group to get in front of, or people that haven't run it, but they're really curious about what the inner workings look like. And then usually two things happen. Either they're like, oh crap, I'm running LinkedIn ads and we're not doing this, this, or this. Maybe I should talk to someone. Or they're like, oh, I thought I wanted to do it myself, but this seems really complicated. Maybe I should talk to these guys. So I think those work really well with cold, but you want to look at what a good first touch would be. And then in retargeting, I almost go always for the same things, whatever builds trust and builds credibility. So it's different for every company, but I ask this question. If someone visits your website, an ideal prospect, and leaves, and you could put 15 or 20 assets in front of them over the next 90 days that might move the needle and paint you in the picture you want to be seen and build the trust and credibility you need, what would those assets be? What would that messaging be? And I would put those into retargeting ads and use Thought Leader if possible. And it's usually case studies, testimonials, actual examples, actual how-to, or even qualifying questions like who is a good fit for what I serve? Who, is not a good fit for what I serve? Like disqualify or qualify. Those are great posts because people will read those and then they respect you a little bit more for laying it out there, and they get more information as well from that. But those do really well.
Hey there, Logan here. Hopefully you're getting some good ideas and practical tactics to execute your own nearbound marketing from this episode. You know what else helps? The right tools. That's why I'm a huge fan of Reveal. I use it to get insights into which partners already have relationships with my audience. This lets me decide which partners to work with to power my own nearbound marketing efforts. Want to reach accounts faster, more efficiently, and most importantly, with more value? From events to ABM, understanding which partners your buyers already trust is going to accelerate hitting the KPIs of your marketing programs. Learn more at reveal.co or check the link in the description of this episode. All right, back to today's conversation. Yeah, absolutely. I know I mentioned we were going to push back a little bit on the tactics and the formats, but you mentioned that one that's doing really well for you that you said is in this first bucket of case studies showing results. Just curious, is that a video? Is there a link in there? Are you doing any zero click with this one? Form fill right on LinkedIn or driving them to a landing page? Give us a little bit of the implementation of that one example so we can pause here for 1 sec. Yeah.
So for that one, it is a single image. It's an image of LinkedIn channel dashboard with like some stuff circled. Or I think it was amount spent over the last 90 days and then conversion value in that same time. And I use that format for a couple of things, especially being an advertiser. Like one of the things I like to show is, hey, we lose money on the cold layer. It's an investment. We're getting quality data here, and then we make our return and a positive ROI in the retargeting. But that one's a single image. One good tip about this, that's people who have done this are figuring it out, but those of you who haven't, might be a useful tip. After you sponsor it, you can go back and edit the original post. So normally, my top performing LinkedIn post, I would never in a million years chock it full of links at the bottom or plug in my website. But after it's run its organic course and now you're sponsoring it with paid ads, you don't have to follow those rules. Go back at the bottom of your post, add your website, add your YouTube channel, add your newsletter subscription, add additional links right there. You don't need to worry about breaking those rules anymore. So I've done that. But I would say most of the time I feel like it's non-click. Like they're seeing it, they're not really clicking through those. They're absorbing it, but they leave LinkedIn and come Google us eventually. We see I guess we'll get into this, but you'll see if you're doing it right, usually it's you'll see channel attribution in LinkedIn, but then you'll see a big surge in like organic traffic. And branded traffic because you're building this kind of awareness engine and it's getting captured by like Google organic.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not let Google take too much credit because they'll do that, right? Okay, so the first, as you mentioned, there are some clear buckets of the type of content and where it fits in cold versus retargeting. The first is case studies. Show me those results, which I can really identify with. I've even seen on the organic side as we talk about the interplay between the organic and now the paid side with LinkedIn Thought Leader. There's enough people creating content. We've heard a lot of the same things. People don't want pontification. They want, show me the receipts, show me something, to use your word earlier, that's been a big theme of the show, that I can trust, right? Yeah. So moving on from that case study example, what are some of the other clear buckets of the content types, not necessarily the formats, but the style of content, what's being presented there, Justin?
So this one's a little more modern that you might like, but one of my top performing plays is, so I use video, but the format is guest interview as a podcast. So I have a retargeting campaign, a retargeting thought leader video campaign, and the only thing in there is usually clips where I was a guest on podcasts. So people visit our website, they visit LinkedIn, sure, they see my other ads, but then they're going to start seeing me showing up on all these different podcasts, being a guest. And so I think it's the idea of third-party validation. And so it's one thing for you to have these ads and for you to tell people how cool and wise and what a great, marketer or company you are. It's quite another thing for other people to recognize you as an expert and to elevate that to your prospects, because it's like selling without selling. If they see me just talking to them like a talking head, sharing my expertise, that does move the needle, and I wouldn't underwrite that. But if they see me on this podcast, for example, and they respect you and the other people that have been on here, I get points. We trade audiences a little bit. And that's a really good tactic there, or yeah, good style
Ooh,
that works.
I really, really like that one, man. My time at a podcast agency, shout out to my friends at Sweetfish, it was something that we consistently recommended to our clients who were often hosts of their B2B brand show, right? The SaaS company has a podcast. Their executive is usually the host of the show. And we would tell them, if someone asks you to be a guest on a show, you should always go. Because one, it gives you an opportunity to get in front of other podcast listeners and point back to that. But number two, even if that show doesn't have a big audience, it's what you said. It's the psychology of that third party validation. Yeah. Okay, they were talking about their expertise. Someone, right, whether it's a big audience or not, saw enough there to host them, to post produce the content. I'm curious with that, Justin, because every podcast is different in, do they create clips? Are they branded? What format? That sort of stuff. What's your motion to actually make that repeatable? Is it something that you do when you guest on a podcast? You ask for, hey, are you going to create any short form clips? Or do you have a process that you ask them, hey, can I post produce this and put your show's logo on it? What are kind of some of the mechanics there? Because this is a new one for me. And I think it could be one that others could want to activate pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it's different depending on the podcast because, yeah, some are more mature and they have like, yeah, we're going to get you this package afterwards and promotional materials, and we'll even script some emails or, messaging if you want to blast on social. They get really organized. If they even just give me the long form and, the long form video, I'm usually good with that. I can use Descript, and shout out to Descript, which I'm sure you use as well. It sounds like
same here.
The modern marketer with Canva, Descript, and ChatGPT, and like these different things, like you could really amplify your time. But yeah, if I have the long form video, I was not opposed to just chopping it up myself and creating some clips. And I'm usually really honest on podcast interviews about my intent to want to get this out as well. And usually it's mutually beneficial. Like, hey, you use this, put it out wherever you want. We're going to put that. If they have issues with it, they'll usually tell you. But yeah, so if they give it to me, that's awesome. I'll use it. If they don't, and I can get the long form video, I can chop it up myself. Now I actually have a couple of people on our content team. It's been me just for years. So I'm still comfortable just doing it myself because they're doing client work. So I don't want to necessarily I don't have a perfected internal system where that's just part of their duties. So yeah, I would say use something like Descript and Canva, and you could chop something up pretty easily.
Completely agree. I love that, man. All right. What are some of the other buckets? So we've talked about the case study. We've talked about kind of sharing your expertise, but with that caveat of pulled from guest interviews of other podcasts, which I think is a great little wrinkle. Small change there, but I think some big impacts. What are some of the other clear buckets before we get into some of the more tactical things of how to do this, the formats, and some of the things, or are those kind of the two primary ones you're thinking of right now?
Yeah, those are some of the main ones I use. I guess the other one is, and it kind of falls into the bucket of, I adopted this strategy of kind of give the whole damn playbook away as part of my, what kind of content I want to create. And so there is a level of expertise where it's higher level. There's also this, the how-to, I think is still super powerful, and it serves different parts of the funnel. And it's create some content that's exactly, share the exact frameworks or systems that you follow when people pay you money. People pay you hundreds or thousands of dollars to do this thing. Describe how to do that exactly so that they don't need you. That kind of content to me is really powerful because yes, it does still show trust and expertise. It's different than an audit. It's different than whatever. And it usually does one or two things. If they don't have budget, but they have a lot of time on their hands, sure, they're going to take that. They're going to run with it. They're going to try to implement it. But that's fine because they weren't going to be a client anyway. They don't have the budget. If they have the budget and they don't have the time, then they're going to see you as an expert. They're probably reading it because they think they have the time, or they're underestimating how complex it is. They're consuming it, and then their mind shifts and they say, okay, this is more complicated than I thought. I have the money to, just have this done. And this guy's clearly knows what he's doing. Take my money. So that kind of, I think that's slightly different than an audit or just, pontificating or even talking about some different tactical. If you get really granular and you're this is the exact framework that I use. A client pays me $10,000. Their budget is, whatever a month. This is the framework that I use to implement a strategy for them. Super powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And to give people maybe kind of a way to remember these three buckets that you're talking about of types of content you could use for thought leader ads. The first, that case study is, what we've done, right? And it's showing the receipts as we've talked about. Number two is how we think, right? If you're a guest on a podcast, you're probably talking about your points of view, your thoughts on the market and the specific niche that you serve and your category, right? And then the third is how we do it. Right. And so if you think about those of, what we've done, how we think, and how we've done it, I think I said those a little bit differently, but we'll come up with a better way in the description that you can jot down for yourself than my ramblings here live. But I think those are definitely distinct. And one thing I would call out, I heard this from Alex Hermosi recently, and he was talking about just approach to content. He's someone who's really blown up and kind of become somewhat of the next Gary Vee in the entrepreneurship space, kind of seems like. And he said, there's a big difference between, Justin, you should eat oatmeal every day. And here's why. Da, 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 da. Yeah. As opposed to, hey, Justin, I eat oatmeal every day. I did for the last 30 days. And here's what happened. Right. And that kind of falls into this. If you're sharing those frameworks, the systems, the way that you do things, not necessarily, hey, you should do it this way. It's we've done it like this, a little bit of showing the receipts. This is kind of what we've seen for our clients, but it's more about the how. And it's, hey, you can kind of take it or leave it. So quick aside there, but I think that's how I would kind of wrap up those three different buckets that you were talking about there. Anything you'd add, Justin?
Yeah, you kind of touched on the idea of, and I kind of, when it's back to Gary Vee a little bit, and he seared in my brain, like, document the journey as a way of like thinking about content. And it's kind of like that. Instead of like having an idea and just hammering like everyone should do this, it's here's my journey, here's how I got to this, here's what I'm doing now. So I do think like that's also really good organic content, and it can add some flavor on the paid side. I document things, and some of my posts are simply, hey, we're trying this, we're doing this, we're celebrating, this win. I think interjecting some personality can also be helpful for the paid ad side. It's what attracts people to your personal brand too. Like if the only content they ever saw was just like you down to business talking about that, like it would be a little harder for them to like you. I haven't quite figured out the balance of trying to get that into the thought leader other than using video assets, because I feel like even if I'm explaining something, I'm going to share, my personality is going to come through in video. Right. So I can interject that. And if people watch, 2 hours worth of my video over 3 months, in different occasions, they're gonna form a certain opinion of me. And hopefully, history's told me, hopefully it's generally good if I'm talking about the right things.
Right. Yeah. I was talking to Nick Bennett of Harness and Hone, and I like the line he was talking about. He's like, I'm going to stop talking about personal brand and start talking about personal reputation. Brand is just, being known, but reputation is then what are you known for? And so hopefully this is helping you to build that reputation, as he kind of drew that distinction, which I thought was interesting. Well, we've alluded to kind of getting into the tactical things of do this, not that, some of the different format things. I'm curious to kind of lead us into that part of the conversation, Justin, with content in general, maybe specifically video. Are you finding certain formats, certain lengths performing better? Vertical short form video, the 9:16 format, obviously with TikTok and then YouTube Shorts, and now you're seeing that format on LinkedIn a lot. Talk to us about maybe some of those things that you've noticed about the formats and what's working, and maybe also I would kind of say the benefit of making kind of lo-fi content where the video isn't too highly produced, that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on all of that? I just triggered the new Apple thumbs up. That's the first time I've done it on a podcast. Anyway, long question. I'm sure you have tons of thoughts, so I'll give you back the mic, my friend.
I mean, it was a really good point. So the thumbs up coming, I think, were only appropriate. But I like what you said about the lo-fi content. So I've always been a fan of that. I didn't have these fancy blue lights like a year ago, and I didn't have this office. I didn't actually have an office until after my business was acquired, and I switched over. But before that, it was a $50 desk from from a garage sale that one of my wife's cousins left us, and a MacBook that my original partner from my restaurant business got for me, and no camera. So that was it for a while. But the video and the personality, I think, and the main investor, he made this point when he acquired us, and I thought it was a diss at first. He said that he was kind of making fun of our website at the time and some of like our style, and he said we have that scrappy startup vibe, and the way he described it made it sound not so attractive. But what he was trying to say is it kind of makes you feel this raw, authentic kind of more, hey, I can actually trust this. When things are too polished, when things are too corporate-y, people kind of just glaze over and don't trust as much. I think that's kind of the idea behind the thought leader ads in general, because I've said this as well. So if there's companies who don't have anyone internally that, just comes to mind, or they're gonna have to start from scratch, given the exact same content, like even if you just took your same corporate-y, boring ad and had it coming from a personal profile, you'd probably have a 5 times better chance of someone actually seeing and engaging with that, because it's just coming from a person versus a corporate post coming from a corporate profile. Like, it's just not going to get as much traction. So I think that's a big mindset, is it just needs to be. And then, yeah, you wouldn't actually post that corporate boring content from your personal. So you need to find, I think one of the things that it challenges you to do is probably just improve the quality of your content, because if I wouldn't actually post any of my company page stuff from my personal profile without dramatically overhauling everything, maybe I should rethink like what I'm posting from my company profile also.
Right. That's a good point aside.
So I think that's one tactic is it is coming from a personal profile. You do want to, have some of that personality come through, and less formal conversation, even the way of describing it. So I came from the restaurant industry, and one thing I feel like I have that's a superpower now in the marketing world is I approach most things like I'm a newborn baby trying to figure it out. Like, I didn't grow up in marketing, so I don't know what everyone's been doing for years. Or if I learn it, it's just so I can like get to the basics. Okay, now I'm doing what other people are doing. Now I need to stop and think like, does this make sense for me? Should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? And so I feel like I'm more apt to like try different things or experiment or just be more of a human being, because I'm not bound by like a lot of the traditional things. Like, I'm just testing and figuring it out. So I think that helps as well. Just maybe having that mentality is more of a tactic as well with some of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that Isaac Morehouse at Reveal shared actually on this show of, coming into marketing without a whole lot of B2B marketing experience in SaaS, right? It's a double-edged sword. You don't know what you don't know, but you also don't come with the baggage of bad habits and things that you just do because that's the way everybody else does them. And I guess on that note of doing things a certain way, what have been some of the key learnings for you, Justin, that you could offer to folks who are going to be new to trying LinkedIn Thought Leader ads in 2024, of the things that you wish you knew, the pitfalls to look out for, both in creating the content, setting up the ads, thinking about cold versus retargeting? We've touched on some of that, but what advice would you give to folks in that area?
Yeah, I feel like I need to make this point, even if we're talking to more experienced marketers. What I find is, so I have a lot of respect for marketers, and I know that like I make mistakes every day. So one thing I've realized is that, so each channel is like an ocean of knowledge. I consider myself more of like a broader marketer, and I went deep on LinkedIn, and so I have more expertise there, but I'm maybe like a 5 on Google and a 4 on Meta, and I've tried Quora and Reddit and different stuff. But these platforms work so differently, and so I don't care if you're an amazing Meta marketer and a killer Google search paid expert. You need to take a minute, consult with someone, get the basics on LinkedIn right. Because my first tip to doing influencer ads is not to throw all the money down the drain by not getting the basics right. So, turn off LinkedIn Audience Network, turn off expansion, look at your targeting, look at the or and. I cannot tell you, and I'm saying this like knowing that these are probably, some sophisticated marketers I'm talking to, and yet I'll talk to them, like children to some degree, because I feel like we need to get back to that. I've seen Fortune 1000 companies literally wasting almost $500,000 a month on LinkedIn with just basic stuff not right. So get the basics right, get your targeting right. One massive superpower that I think LinkedIn ads has, that I think thought leader ads fit really well into, is the idea that the LinkedIn Insights tag picks up on all your website traffic, not just your LinkedIn traffic. So if you have Google search, SEO, organic, all the traffic that's hitting your website, you can then pick that up and layer on all the amazing LinkedIn qualifying filters to say, okay, they visited my website and they're from, United States and United Kingdom and these places I serve. They are from these company sizes that likely have budget. They're this level of seniority that has decision-making prowess. They're from these job functions inside that org that are relevant to what I serve. Simply dicing that up and giving your thought leader ads the biggest chance to have an impact and move the needle with those people. I wish, I think it would be more beneficial sometimes to spend a lot more time in that than some of the more fancy tricks. But then other than that, I would say the more advanced would be to look at frequency. So if you do have a retargeting audience, and where you're focusing, and the only two levers you have, so ad frequency or LinkedIn frequency, it's how many ads on average the average prospect is seeing in a given time frame. So like if your main retargeting audience or campaign is a 90-day retargeting campaign, look at that frequency. If the frequency is less than 5 or less than 10 in a 90-day period, you're not saturating that group enough probably to move the needle. They're not seeing enough of your stuff for you to move the needle on trust and credibility. So, you have to get to the point where it's your content that's actually moving the needle and not the basic settings getting wrong and not your lack of saturation. So if you get those right, and that frequency is a big one that I'm on, then you can say, okay, my 90-day frequency is 17. The average prospect is going to see 17, or I get to place 17 of these ads on the prospects feed over 90 days. Now I can look and really evaluate what 17 assets or whatever I want to put in there and make sure they see. And then I would go in and change the setting that and they hide this setting. Instead of optimize for performance, optimize for to distribute the ads evenly. It's a hidden setting, not on the main settings tab. You have to go to where you're actually like editing ads, and it's a setting you can change there. Then instead of you just hammering your top 3 posts 5 times each over 90 days, they actually get to see the 15 or 20 unique assets over the course of 3 months, and that would move the needle a lot more.
Oh man, that's a really good tip. Even going back to the basics, Justin, I really appreciate it. If you're listening to this and you're like myself and maybe you're much more experienced on the LinkedIn organic side, not so much the paid side, hit that back button a few times. Justin dropped a few, turn off this and that, check your ors and ands, those sorts of things. But even in the advanced, I like what you said there about the frequency, some benchmarks to go off of there. And did you say that last one that you said is kind of a hidden setting, optimized to distribute the ads evenly, is the checkbox that people should be looking for?
So after you choose the audience and set the budget, when you hit next, that screen that displays all of your ads, at the top there's a little gearbox, and you can it's by default optimized for performance, which usually for most cold campaigns, and even it's not the worst for people. But if you're taking this approach where you want to say, okay, I don't like optimize for performance is great for lead gen forms, for calls to action. But if you're looking at, just to distribute content and guarantee assets or content in front of people regardless, because to me, like I have 20 ads, or 20 posts. I know that these 3 or 4 will probably move the needle, but the other ones have value. The other ones are showing personality. The other ones are showing my team. The other ones are showing, whatever. So even if I know these 3 or 4 are the ones that end up converting, I want them to see this collection because it amplifies the power of those ones when they get there to push them over. If they don't have that context, then it doesn't happen. So change it from optimize for performance to optimize for even distribution. And that can make a big difference in your retargeting game.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, is there anything, Justin, that I haven't asked you that you were eager to get to of, lessons learned, or, definitely do, this video format over this one, or any of those do's and don'ts, lessons learned that we haven't touched on here that you want to leave folks with today?
Another thing that I would say, like when you're experimenting with this, you're trying, I would look to elevate different voices within your company. So sure, you can go, I think most people are starting with, okay, let's either promote the CMO or the CEO. Let's get them in front of people making big announcements. But if you have a software company or service company, I think it's a good strategy to also elevate other people. So for, in our example or in our company, we're a LinkedIn ads agency. We happen to offer other services, but LinkedIn ads is our core. So I have, stuff coming from my profile, Jonathan, my head of strategy, and Joshua, my head of ops. I'm also sponsoring posts from them. And what you could do is you could have different strategies for different people. For example, in our agency, maybe a more mature version would be I actually have a front person for our Google search segment, and they become, I'm helping them become a thought leader on Google search. And then we elevate a meta strategist and we elevate our LinkedIn. And so eventually, like if an agency was out there and they had this approach where they're using organic and paid to create this series of thought leaders in different segments that all feed back to their business, that'd be really good. In a traditional, maybe you're elevating your client success person and let them know like all the different ways you're solving client problems and onboarding. And someone else is, maybe your ops person is talking about the systems you guys use and how you interact with your clients and how you're strategizing for next year. And so I think there could be a lot of strategies there where you're strategically elevating different people in your organization and shining light. I mean, it's the whole reason you have an about page, but this is like live and in living color. So I think that would be a good strategy as well.
Yeah, and you're getting that about page into the people in front of the people that you want to know about you, right? As opposed to hoping that they just stumble upon that, which the chances are, slim to nil. And I think that's interesting. That could be something that we delve even further into, because as I've talked to a lot of marketers and I ask them, what is your challenge with getting your executives, your SMEs, other individuals within the team, as I've been talking about it here on Nearbound Marketing, activating those evangelists, what's kind of standing in your way? And oftentimes they're like, well, they don't have deep expertise in this area, and this is our persona, right? Like we're a fintech SaaS company, and lots of folks in our team don't have deep expertise in financial services, much less fintech. But it sounds like your thinking, Justin, though, is that if you are willing to invest in this awareness, there's going to be some tertiary benefits to getting your ops leader out in front of that audience, your CS leader out in front of that audience, that is going to, filter back to benefits to the business. Yeah.
Yeah, and it cross pollinates. So if one of the things I see is, so because you're promoting things from personal profiles, there's also other benefits. Like if you're savvy and you're keeping an eye on it, my profile views now are not just being driven by organic, but if I'm actually cataloging and looking at the people viewing my profile, it's ICP fit people that are viewing my profile in a higher concentration now, because I'm controlling, the ad side of it. And so, that could be a list of warm kind of leads of people that are uncovering that. And they kind of cross pollinate. They'll see my sponsored post. They'll check out my profile. They'll look at the company. They'll look at other people. And I like the idea of using, cross pollinating, not just, in this aspect, but also using maybe this format to cross pollinate other things. One additional hack I wanted to share was, those organic posts where it's like comment below for an asset, that works really well.
I was literally just talking about that with a friend earlier.
Really well for sponsoring posts, because now you have the organic and they have this new metric on the LinkedIn dashboard where it's viral views, viral clicks, viral whatever. What it means is I paid to get this user to see my post, and they liked or commented on it, and because that user liked and commented on it, it now exposes that post organically to people in their following. And if those people are now organically exposed to your post and like and comment, those are viral views, viral clicks, viral engagements that were, it started as paid, but then you also get organic benefit from it. And when someone sees the paid ad version of it and comments on your post, you actually get an email from LinkedIn the same way you would if someone commented on one of your LinkedIn ads, which doesn't usually happen for most normal people.
Basically never.
But now, like, my inbox is constant. Like every day there's 3 or 4 or 5 comments from paid versions of my organic post. And you could really game it like that, where you say, hey, I'm going to release this asset, comment below. It starts as an organic post, and then you keep that evergreen with paid ads. And that could be, I say that because I had a series of cold posts, and right now the number one cold thought leader ad that's driving traffic for us is actually not even from me. It's from Jonathan, my head of strategy, and it's a screenshot of like all these Loom videos that he's done, audits for clients or prospects in the last 2 weeks, and his learnings, like top learnings from the last 20 audits I've done in 2 weeks or something. So it's like a really cool whatever. And then it's comment below if you'd like an audit. And he keeps getting comments on that. Like every other day there's a new comment, and every other day there's a new audit he has to do. And it's almost this evergreen kind of lead gen strategy we have going now, to the point where we are wanting to put up a dedicated LinkedIn audits page on our website and kind of fuel that funnel a little more. But before this, it didn't really exist to that degree, but it's opened up a little more.
Yeah, and I would say that that kind of fits into that third bucket we were talking about earlier of like how we do it or how I did it. I think we were terming it of what's your methodology. Well, part of your methodology, especially if you have a service-based business, is, you know, how you audit, assess, and kind of take stock of clients' current situations. But what I hear you saying there, just to, because this is, man, if you listen all the way through, you got a gem of a nugget here from Justin. Take that strategy, which I kid you not, I was like 2 hours ago, I was on a call and we were kind of like, I kind of hate when people do the post of like comment for the resource or whatever, but kind of love it too, because we often do it and we see it work well when we do it organically. So take that, you get those comments, and it's a good way to test it organically. Put it into the thought leader ad. And did I hear you saying this, right, Justin, that then if you get comments, those are considered viral comments because you're getting organic comments on paid ads?
If they see the post from the paid distribution and they comment on it, it's just as if they commented on an ad, and you'll get an email. But if them interacting, if someone in a paid way interacts with your ad, it does then organically expose it to people in their network, and then that next, if anyone that gets exposed to it organically likes or comments, then it becomes viral.
Oh, okay. That second stage. Okay.
Yeah, the second stage.
Awesome. Thank you for belaboring the point for yours truly, who's a little slow. But that's a really good one. And I think that that's a strategy that there are just tons of examples you could look at there. Justin, after we hop off, I might ask you for maybe a few links to some good posts, some good examples that you guys have done or you've seen from others that we could put in the description of this episode to give people a little bit of show and tell. Lots of people are listening. If you're watching us on YouTube, you know, you've seen our faces, but you haven't seen some of these examples. We'll put some of those down in the description below. Justin, this has been fantastic. I want to say to anyone listening, if you've liked this and you want us to go deeper on this topic, I think this is one that Justin and I could keep riffing on. Send us LinkedIn DMs and let us know if this is something that you'd like us to go deeper on in future episodes on the show. Other than that, though, Justin, for someone who is not your LinkedIn profile buddy yet, like myself, what's the best way for them to stay connected with you and learn more about what you guys have going on over at Impactable, my friend?
You can look me up on LinkedIn, Justin Rowe. I'm usually one of the top Justin Rows that would pop up. You can visit our website, impactable.com, and also our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and look for either LinkedIn ads, hopefully I'll show up, or Impactable on LinkedIn ads. It took forever to go from 0 to 2,000 subscribers. I think we're at 2,100. Like the first 1,000 is really hard.
Man. That's good.
It's nowhere near as much as my LinkedIn, but I feel really proud of it because it took a lot of work to get even 2,000 subscribers. So our YouTube channel, literally there's a basics playlist that probably would be like some $297 course somewhere else, but it's how to install the pixel, how to create your first audience, you could just go through it and learn the basics of LinkedIn. So check out our YouTube channel, Impactable on YouTube. Some of the best places to find more.
I love it, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for making time. We went a little long, but I think it was packed full of value in today's conversation. Again, if you got value from this, hit Justin and I up. Very accessible in the LinkedIn DMs. Thank you so much for listening. And Justin, thanks again for being our guest today.
Awesome. Thank you so much.